So BBC posted an article, What is the Sovereign Citizen Movement? Excuse me. A growing movement of people who believe that laws do not apply to them threatens police and law enforcement around the world, experts and officials say. So-called sovereign citizens believe that they are immune from government rules and in some cases, including recently in Australia and the US, have violently confronted police. Coronavirus mitigation measures, including mandatory social distancing and mask wearing, may also be fueling the anti-government conspiracy, spreading its message to a global minority that view the deadly pandemic as a hoax. So who are sovereign citizens? The FBI has described the movement, which lacks any organizational structure, as, quote, domestic terrorism in the U.S. and calls followers, quote, anti-government extremists who believe that even though they physically reside in this country, they are separate or sovereign from the United States. The ideology hatched in the 70s and grew out of Posse Comitatus, Posse Comitatus. Any lawyers are probably like, what the fuck are you doing? I completely butchered that. But it looks like this. A U.S. anti-government group that contained many followers who were all anti-Semitic and believed governments were controlled by the Jews. Lovely. Of course, sovereign citizens started with neo-Nazis. What a fucking shock. Poses Comitatus. Nope, still can't do it well. It rose in prominence in the 1990s alongside the militia movement, says Mark Pitcavage, a researcher at the Anti-Defamation League who has followed the movement for over 20 years. In the late 90s, the ideology reached Canada through anti-tax groups before later going to Australia and then the UK and Ireland, says Mr. Pitcavage. In Australia, police this week attributed a dangerous rise in people resisting lockdown orders, sometimes violently, to the sovereign citizen movement. Victoria Chief Police Commissioner Shane Patton said on Tuesday that officers have been forced to smash the windows of cars and pull people out to provide details after they have refused to answer questions or show documents. Sovereign citizens and anti-government groups became familiar to the Americas in the 90s, but any sympathy the wider public may have had towards such movements evaporated after the horrific Oklahoma City attack. I don't know if anyone doesn't know about the Oklahoma City bombing. Basically, some anti-government shitbags blew the fuck out of this building in Oklahoma City in the late 90s. It was, prior to 9/11, I think, like, the worst terrorist attack on American soil in terms of, I think, casualty and overall destruction. I think it was Timothy McVeigh, I want to say, was the name of the guy. Let me see. I might be confusing him for someone else. Oklahoma City bomber. Bomer. The Oklahoma City bombing was a domestic terrorist truck bombing of the Alfred P. Murray Federal Building in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, United States on April 19, 1995, perpetuated by American terrorists Timothy McVeigh, no, I was right, and Terry Nichols. The bombing happened at 9:02 a.m. and killed at least 168 people, including many children, injured more than 680 others, and destroyed more than one-third of the building, which had to be demolished. The blast destroyed or damaged 324 other buildings within a 16-block radius, shattered glass in 258 nearby buildings, and destroyed or burned 86 cars, causing an estimated $652 million worth of damage. Local, state, federal, and worldwide agencies engaged in extensive rescue efforts in the wake of the bombing. They and the city received substantial donations from across the country. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, activated 11 of its urban search and rescue task forces consisting of 665 rescue workers who assisted in rescue and recovery operations. Until the September 11th attacks in 2001, the Oklahoma City bombing was the deadliest terror attack in the United States. It remains the deadliest act of terrorism in U.S. history. Crazy shit. Legit crazy shit. Now there are signs that their ideas are catching on again. The political climate is to blame, including emergency coronavirus measures and anti-police sentiment after the killing of George Floyd. I don't know about that one. I find that to be incredibly untrue. Most of these anti-police, like, I'm talking sovereign citizen people, are right-wing, not left-wing. Like, I can question police and their measures without saying that the police themselves are illegitimate and don't have authority over me. That's the problem. They do have authority over us, right? So we need to make sure that the rules and training that goes into policing are beneficial to the population and not creating cops that are going to murder people. So I completely disagree. I disagree with this sentiment. And also, even the emergency coronavirus measures, like, that might put the pressure on these people and get them to act out more, but people are not turning to this because of coronavirus. So I disagree with that. Their ideas travel. Ahaha, I see what you did there. When I covered an anti-lockdown protest in London in May, the first person I encountered was a man eager to tell me why the government had no legal power over him, but it's the US where the greatest potential victim violence lies, particularly as Americans get deeper into a pandemic and potentially fraught election campaign. In Singapore, a country known for adherence to rules, a viral video in May this year showed a 40-year-old woman refusing to don a face mask, telling people, "I'm a sovereign. This is something people are not going to know what it is." Quote, "It means I have nothing to do with the police. It means I have no contact with the police. They have no say over me," end quote, said the woman, who was later sent to a mental health facility. Well, that's good. I'm glad she's getting help. In the U.S., suspects of violent crimes, including a man accused of beheading his landlord in a rent dispute last week, have claimed to be immune from prosecution as sovereign citizens. A geek with a guitar 99, thanks for continuing your 3-month subscription streak. And a geek with a guitar 99 says, "Don't usually catch a stream live because time zones, but always catch up on your YouTube channel. Thanks for the quality lockdown entertainment." Well, thank you. Speaking of which, if anyone hasn't subscribed to my YouTube channel, we finally got over the 1,000 subscriber mark, which was my initial goal. My new goal is to get over 3,000 subscribers, so I will officially have more subscribers than Hans Worm Hat. So, if you haven't, check out my YouTube and subscribe. One of the ideology's most famous adopters was Oklahoma City bombing conspirator Terry Nichols, who filed endless frivolous lawsuits against the government in the years before the '95 attack on a federal building, which killed 168 people. The sovereign citizen movement is different from the militia movement, which puts more emphasis on the paramilitary weapons training and organization, experts say. Sovereign citizens, which also go by many other names, including constitutionalists, common law citizens, free men, and non-resident aliens, favor legal arguments. Legal arguments. I would call it pseudo-legal arguments more than legal arguments. It also differs from the QAnon conspiracy theory, which believes President Donald Trump is saving the world from evil because sovereign citizens view all government figures, including Mr. Trump, as illegitimate. Interestingly, that's not the case. We've seen sovereign citizen literally pray to Trump in one video. So there is some crossover between QAnon people and sovereign citizens, even though those are contradictory viewpoints. Like, cognitive dissonance is a thing. People will have it. Like, these people can think, like, Donald Trump is, like, the good guy, and he's ousting all the bad police I don't like. What is this, a crossover episode? The general ideology is based on the belief that the original government set up by the U.S. founders, which most adherents refer to as common law, was slowly and secretly replaced by an illegitimate government sometime in the 1800s. Not the case. Followers around the world make similar claims about their own governments or British royal family, as is the case with Australia, says Mr. Pitcavage. They believe there is a legal way to opt out of the current legal system that comes through filing documents and ending what they view as contracts with the government, such as driving licenses and identity documents. None of that's true, of course. Adherents are told by redemption gurus that they can use phrases which they believe to have legal meaning to divorce themselves from the illegitimate government, says Mr. Pitcavage. They often print out and carry documents which they claim prove their status. I'm having mush mouth today. I'm having a lot of trouble getting my words out. And once you do that, once you have regained your sovereignty, none of the laws, rules, tax, court orders, anything of the legitimate de facto government have any more power or justification over you whatsoever. Followers resist all government laws and regulations, no matter how trivial, and in the U.S. often file lengthy legal battles against the government, which critics refer to as paper terrorism. They sometimes film encounters with the police using the phrases that they believe protect them, including, "Am I being detained?" They have occasionally set up, quote, common law courts and issued bogus arrest warrants for U.S. officials. Some have been arrested with fake car registration plates they have issued to themselves, or have even printed their own currency believing the dollar to be invalid. Mr. Pitcavage says it's common to find European followers cite the U.S. criminal code, which has... Mr. Pitcavage says it's common, rather, to find European followers cite U.S. criminal code, which has no legal bearing there. This is what I don't get about the sovereign citizen types who believe that money isn't legitimate, and they think that, like, since the Federal Reserve came to exist, and we went off the gold standard, that money doesn't exist. What do you think money is? Because, like, the money I have in my wallet or is linked to my bank account, which is not a gold standard currency, it's a fiat currency. It's what we have in the United States and many other countries. I can take that money and go to a store and buy goods with it. I can pay someone to do a service for me with that money. How is it illegitimate? I can go buy a Big Mac with it. You know what I mean? Like, what do you think money is, if not something that is commonly understood to be used to trade for goods and services? Seems odd to me. It's like they think currency is this religious thing that, like, there's some out in the ether, this idea of currency that's real, whatever that means, and we aren't following that standard, whatever it is, gold standard, silver standard, so it doesn't count. Like, no, money's just whatever we decide. Like, I think the origin of currency, started with, like, seashells, stuff like that. And in fact, some of the earliest coins were actually based on seashells. That's pretty neat. I've looked into it before. They mint, like, basically fake seashell coins. Very cool. And of course, that later turned into normal coinage and money as we understand it today. Paper money didn't come around until closer to the modern era because of manufacturing limitations and, of course, you know, making sure that you can't counterfeiting measures on paper money wasn't necessarily a thing back in the day, which is why coinage was such a thing. So, just seems odd to me. If you can take your money, go to the store, go to McDonald's and buy a hamburger with it, we're gonna call this the hamburger test. I'm gonna coin this right now. The hamburger test. If I can go down the street from me and buy a hamburger with the money that I have, then it is money. Because you can trade it for goods and services. It reminds me of that Simpsons gag. Hold on. Money can be used for goods and services. Simpsons. $20? I wanted a peanut.
Ow, pointy! You slimy. Uh-oh, moving. Uh-huh. Aw, $20. I wanted a peanut. $20 can buy many peanuts. Explain how. Money can be exchanged for goods and services. Woohoo!
Like, yeah, that's it. Fuck it, we could call it the peanut test after that clip. Like, as long as you can exchange this money for goods and services, it's valid money. There you go. It's pretty simple. Some followers believe it is possible to access a secret government-held fund once they become sovereign. The IRS, which oversees federal tax payments in the U.S., says on its website the notion of a, quote, secret account assigned to each citizen is pure fantasy. This is true. Of course it's fantasy. Not Ray Comfort. Kent Hovind believes in this. Kent Hovind is a bit of a sovereign citizen. I'd love to debate him on that. We had a bit of a tiff over our, we had a bit of a tiff, as it were, over our creationism debate that we had before, but I'd love to debate him on this sovereign citizen shit. That'd be fun. Some think that, quote, by filing a series of complex legal-sounding documents, the sovereign can tap into that secret treasury account for his own purposes. According to the Southern Poverty Law Center, which tracks extremist groups, followers are often struggling financially or are people who cannot tolerate government bureaucracy, says Mr. Pitcavage. The sovereign citizen movement, through its pseudo-legal theories and tactics, tells them who to blame. It's the illegitimate government. It's the illegitimate banking system. It's this and that, and then offers them a way out. Interesting article. Mostly stuff we already knew, but, like, hey, it is what it is.